first topic is energy property and property allocation in Indonesia, evident from this Tenggara. And the second presentation, financial inclusion for women, impact evolution for finance on women empowerment in Indonesia. Before we go to the presentation, let me briefly introduce the speakers today. First speaker is Dr. Matheus Trisambodo. He is a researcher from Economic Center of the Indonesian Institute of Sciences, and he is currently as a fellow in ISEAS Singapore. And the second presenter is Ibu Umi Karomahayamidin. She is also from the Economic Center of the Indonesian Institute of Science. Both speakers will have 45 minutes to present their presentation, and after that we will have 30 minutes for the question and answer. For the first chance, I will give the time to Dr. Matheus Trisambodo to present his presentation. Time is yours.
Thank you very much, Teddy. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. Thank you very much for your kind attention attending our CALTE session of MVP. So, before I share my presentation, I would like to inform that what I'm going to present is part of the research that we are doing now in MVP. And the research coordinator is Dr. Siwage Peremanegara. And we also have some members here, Felix, Ella, and Ines, and Helmi Puadi. So I'm just helping this team and sharing my view from Singapore. Because actually I'm coordinating for this research, but due to my responsibility as a physical fellow in ISIS, so I have to ask Wage to replace me to lead this project. Okay, I will divide my presentation into two main elements. In the first part, I would like to highlight the macro situations for the electricity in Indonesia. I will share how the Indonesian position in ASEAN and how the importance of energy in terms of poverty allocation. Because so far we are talking about poverty, we just focus on income dimension, money dimension. But in fact, in Indonesia, non-income poverty such as access on water, access on electricity, road, education, health, they are quite important. I think more important than the income dimension itself. And then in the second part, I would like to share our experiences from East Nusa Tenggara. We pick up East Nusa Tenggara because this province have relatively low electricity consumption per capita, and also East Nusa Tenggara have huge potential on renewable energy. So we are thinking that by promoting renewable energy in East Nusa Tenggara, it can help the governments to allocate property and also to make make the environment much better. So I'd like to go to energy poverty. Okay, I think when we talk about energy poverty, we are dealing with the issue on lack of access and modern energy services. So this includes access on electricity and also clean cooking facilities. So in many villages, especially outside Java, they still depend on firewoods as cooking energy. And then Reddy and also Astrid Masud and others try to make the definition of energy poverty is more broader. This is not only about the economics, but also it's about the social and the environmental dimension. So energy poverty covers three parts. Four parts. Energy itself is the access, availability, supply, and then the economy regarding supporting the economic activity electricity, reducing later we'll see the energy spending on kerosene, for example. And then on social dimension, we see the access on electricity can help rural villages to be more inclusive in their relationship one another. And then for education and health. And then finally for the environment. Why energy poverty is important? Basically, if we follow the World Summit on Sustainable Development in Johannesburg, South Africa in 2002, there's a statement there that say access to energy facilitate the eradication of poverty. And then if you look on the UN resolution number 65 that is declared in 2012, say that what is the year of sustainable energy for all. And then we also notice that it's necessary to have to ensure that access on energy should be universal for all. So even the UN declared 2014 until 2024 as a UN decade of sustainable energy for all. So I think this is a good momentum for Indonesia to do the best to reach energy access for all. Okay, now how about the data in the ASEAN level? So this figure indicates that Indonesia has the highest number of population without electricity access, about 66 million people, or about 49% of energy poverty, electricity poverty in the ASEAN contributed by Indonesia. So Indonesia, if Indonesia can help to reduce this number, Indonesia can make the ASEAN much better. But if you look on in terms of percentage of population, it seems that Cambodia have the highest people without electricity access, about 66%. And if you look on the population relying on traditional use of biomass for cooking, this also indicates that Indonesia has the highest number. So both in terms of electricity and also for cooking, people still depend on traditional energy sources. Okay, next we look on the Energy Development Index. Energy Development Index is the indicators to measure how the transformation from traditional energy use to modern energy use. If you look on the rank, there's around 80 countries in the survey. Indonesia ranked 37, a bit far from the top. The country in ASEAN that quite good in terms of energy index is Malaysia. And if we look in the cluster, Indonesia in the same group with Vietnam and Philippines in terms of rank. And then if you look also in more detail on the household energy level energy access, for example, for the electrification rate, Indonesia is about 70%. So we are the lowest compared to the origin of ASEAN member. Basically, this table try to remind us that Indonesia is still like behind the neighbor countries, so Indonesia need to do a lot of things to improve electricity or modern energy access for the people. Next, please. There's an indicator on global multidimensional property index. So, Human Development Index just cover on education and health and also GDP, but there is no information on standard of living that include electricity and cooking fuel. But if you look more closely to the other dimension of human development indicators, multidimensional property index, electricity and cooking fuel is part of the standard of living. So the three dimensions, education, health, and standard of living, is comprised the multidimensional property index. So the index consists of 10 10 indicators, as we see from the figures. And then if we try to break down the index, next please. So if you look on the percentage contribution, depreciation of each dimension to overall poverty, it seems that energy, what we represent by electricity and cooking fuel, rank 1, for example, in Cambodia, it's about 22% in percentage contribution to depreciation of poverty. And then for Laos, Indonesia is rank number 2. In Vietnam also the rank number 2. In Thailand and in Philippines number 3. This means that energy poverty is matter if we are willing to eradicate poverty. So government can start from providing modern energy services to the community. Now I would like to draw your attention on at the provincial level. So this is the indicator of electrification ratio. What is electrification ratio? Is the percentage population that have the percentage of households that have access on electricity. Of course, the highest is DKI Jakarta. It's almost reached 100%, and the lowest is Papua. But if you look in the Java, it's Banten actually the lowest province compared with the others. This is important, I think, because Banten could be one of the center of industrial zone there. So providing electricity in Banten is quite crucial. And then another thing that we need to consider when we dealing with electrification ratio is the length of transmission line. So from the next figure, this is no wonder why electrification ratio in Jakarta and in Java relatively high compared with the other provinces. Because the length of transmission line in Java is the highest, the longest compared with the other provinces. Even in Papua, and you see this is pretty low there if we compare with the total area, the regions. So this is really unfair. If you move to the eastern part of Indonesia, the length of transmission line is getting smaller and smaller. Just my curiosity to look at the correlation between length of transmission line and electrification rate ratio. It's all positive correlation. That means when the transmission line increases, the electrification ratio also tend to increase. So this indicates that it is necessary for the new governments, the new administrative government, to put a lot of effort to do investment on transmission, especially in the eastern part of Indonesia. So I'm thinking maybe if Joko Widodo some time increasing the fuel prices, so part of the funds should go for investment in transmission electricity. Okay, now another issue that also important is the political will. Actually, if you look why the eastern part of Indonesia is lacking electricity access, because if you look on the net capacity. So in electricity terminology, there are two important terminology. Installed capacity is indicate the power on the label of the machine, how much the powers. And then the second is rate capacity. Rate capacity is the actual capacity, the actual electricity that can be generated. If you look on these tables, this really indicates the political will is not there. Why I say, let's look on Java and Bali. In Java and Bali in 2009, the share of installed capacity is about 77% in 2009. And in 2013, it's increased to 83%. So increasing. So the dimension of electricity development is still biased on Java Islands. Java increasing, but if you look on the other islands, such as in Sumatra, the sale capacity declining from 15% to about 10%. Even in the East Nusa Tenggara, Papua is stagnant. So even in Papua, the electrification low transmission, lacking transmission line, but this is not the end of the story. The capacity also, the development of new capacity also lack in those regions. So it's quite sad story of the last 5 years, the development of electricity sector in Indonesia. So it should be our great concern for the next government. Because we see that the share of Jawa increasing in terms of the share, of course, it indicates that there's a convergence, this convergence in terms of the rate capacity. So the rate capacity across the province is divergent. So we are not divergent, we are not inclusive in constructing power capacity in the region, but we are getting more exclusive, more Jawa bias. So that is one of the big challenges also for the next government, how to allocate more resources, not only to develop transmission line outside Java, but also to ensure that outside Java also have increasing in terms of that capacity. Okay, next please. Now I would like also to share the convergence in electrification ratio. So this is quite interesting. If you look on the convergence electrification ratio across the province level. For example, in terms of electrification ratio, actually is getting better. That indicates the other region outside Jawa Bali or the province also increasing in electrification ratio. But if you look at electricity consumption per capita, it's actually become divergent, not converging. Why? Maybe our research Province Nusa Tenggara can explain this situation. Providing electricity is not only about you have electricity, yes, that's not the end, but how much you have electricity. For example, if in this Nusa Tenggara, we claim that by giving 12 watt of electricity power, mean people get electricity. So the ratio of electrification, of course, increasing. But if we come in terms of electricity consumption per capita, what can you do with 12 watt electricity powers? But government claim electrification ratio increasing in that regions. So our research team really claim to the government, this is not the way. We claim electrification ratio outside Java is increasing with this situation. This is not fair. In Java, you get at least 450 watt, but outside Java just 12 watt, and you claim electrification ratio in those regions increasing. So this is not the case. Okay, now I would like to go more deeply on our case study. Okay, next. So we conducted case study in East Nusa Tenggara. Why we pick up East Nusa Tenggara? Because in Nusa Tenggara there is a geothermal power plant, Ulumbu power plant with the capacity to multiply by 2.5 megawatts. So this is the first, I think the first renewable energy sources in Manggarai district, East Nusa Tenggara. So we pick up Ulumbu, and then we confirm the PLN office in Ulumbu, and when the Ulumbu will be ready to electrify people. So we have the indication of the date, and then in 2014 we went to one of the villages nearby Ulumbu. The villages doesn't get electricity, but because we have information from PLN next year, that means in 2014 they will have electricity. So we visited again the village this year. So we have the baseline, and then we evaluate the situation after the people get electricity. Next, please. So this is the Ulumbu power plant. Ulumbu power plant they have started to operate in November 2011. So we start to operate, and Ulumbu power plant is very important for Manggarai district because with Ulumbu, the consumption of diesel oil is declining because Ulumbu is based on renewable, so it can replace diesel consumption. So actually, it can help PLN also, government, to reduce subsidy on electricity. So when we are dealing with reducing subsidy on electricity, renewable energy should be the solution, the best solution. So Ulumbu power plant is very important for the villages in Manggarai district. It's about almost 15 15 villages get electricity from Ulumbu, so it's very significant. There is a village in nearby Ulumbu, we call Tantong village. Tantong village is very close, maybe around 1 kilometer or less than 2 kilometers, I guess, from the Ulumbu power plant. But this village just got electricity in this year, in March 2014. So it's about more than 2 years after Ulumbu power plant operate. This village doesn't get electricity, just you get electricity. So we visited this village as a baseline for our study, and then we compare with the other villages. I will explain later. Next, please. So this figure just to show that after Ulumbu power plant can operate, it can reduce consumption of diesel fuel. And if we look on the total saving, the budget that can be saved from Ulumbu is about 75.4 billion rupiah. So it's pretty lot of money for PLN by substituting diesel power plant to geothermal power plants. This is only from economic perspective, and from environmental perspective, you also can calculate how many CO2 emission can be saved by Ulumbu power plant. Okay, next please. I'm sorry if the picture is not quite clear. So as I mentioned before, we visited 3 villages. One village is as our baseline, our treatments. We call the Tantong village, and the other villages, Damu and Lunga, our control villages. So Tantong is on the left side, upper, and Lunga and Mesir is on the right side. Okay, next please. Okay, this is just to give you brief information about the electricity access in those villages. In Damu villages actually they already get PLN connection there because the road infrastructure is quite good there, so it's quite easy for PLN to develop transmission line there. So in Damu village, in 2013, it's about 20 households connected to electricity. So the total households is about 43 households. So the question is why, although the PLN transmission has been there, but only half of the community get electricity. Basically because the connection fee is quite expensive there. So it's about around 2 million rupiah for get connection electricity at home. So with that situation, now government have launched a program, Listrik Murah dan Hemat, electricity safe and cheap and safe electricity. So the program is on the button. So government provide meter, provide lamp, 3 lamps, and then stop contact for 1 house. So government give it for free for poor household. And then the other villages, for example, in Lunga village, there is no PLN grid connection there. So the people use a solar panel. We call a second, support extra hemat energy. So the second is a solar panel. That's the figure. The capacity that I mentioned before is 12 watt power. So only 12 watt. So people can have 3 lamps, and they also can charge their mobile phone with the 12 watt. So per month they have to pay about $3 per month, monthly fee. So they have to pay for that. So but not all the villages in Lunga get a second because the scope of the program is quite limited, and then also many administrative problem there. But interestingly is, if I look the situation in 2014, from 13 households disconnect to this facility. I'm sorry, I make a mistake on this figure, especially on the lunar grid. The sun is not the exact number. I will revise that, but I can ensure that for disconnected is about 13 households. The question is how, after people get electricity, they are disconnected. There are many reasons for that. First, because the facility, the Sehen is not in good quality. So maybe in 1 or 2 days after that, the equipment is broken. So it's difficult to replace with the new one. The other thing is because most of the Sehen customers, they are also poor family. Because they are poor, they have to pay about $3 per month. They don't have money, and then PLN get it back the facility. So this is also quite important later for the government. If Sehen will be one of the intermediary target, because before the community get electricity, it's better for the poor community get full subsidy from the government for $3 per month for the poor family. Okay, can you back to the previous slide? Yes. Okay. It is quite interesting. If we compare the three villages, if you see on the total spending per capita, for all three villages actually below the poverty lines. So all the villages actually they are poor. But I mean, the average spending is below the government threshold for poverty line. So they are poor household. Mostly on average they are poor household. Next, please. Okay. Now, how I can ensure that the access on electricity can help the poor to get better life, better welfare. There are there's several channels to see how the electricity can help to improve the people welfare. There are 3 outcomes there: education, income, and health. But this is quite difficult to ask people income in the household. People try to refuse to give information on income. So it's better to ask about how much your expenditure per month. So they will mention all the expenditure is quite easy. So that's why we assume that the income is in this case is equal to spending. For education and health, yeah, we observe there is some improvement, but not much, because when we visit the villages, it's only 6 months after they get electricity. So the benefit is not the multiplier effect of electricity is not it need more time to work, so it is not really captured in our observation. Okay, next, please. In this econometric exercise, I would like to get information after people have electricity, both from grid and from Sehen, because there are 2 types of electricity people can afford. Grid, well, grid because there is a PLN grid connection there, and Sehen, solar panel. Why solar panel? Because there is no grid, so they have to use solar panel. I try to measure the impact of welfare by spending. So I suppose when people get connected to electricity, both grid or Sehen, the spending will increase. And from the econometric exercise, it seems for after people get connected to electricity, for grid in Tantong village that I mentioned before, Tantong get electricity in 2014, the spending increased, so quite significant in that region. Why the spending increased? Because it's quite interesting, because they spend more for getting connected to electricity. As I mentioned before, people pay for get connection to electricity, installation fee. So actually, most of the spending is for that spending, for paying installation fee, spending increasingly. This our observation. And then for Sehen, Sehen is not as we expect. The sign is negative but not significant. So we argue that Sehen is not quite substantially increased the spending because the capacity of the pole is so low, just what this is only for lighting. So Sehen only have the poor people in transforming from kerosene consumption minyak tanah to electricity. So by access to Sehen, people can reduce kerosene consumption and then pay for electricity. So this is the evidence from the spending. So we are with confidence that after having electricity, spending the household level increase significantly. Okay, next please. So in the second model, we try to conduct a difference in different approach. So because we have control, we have treatment group. So we try to get the net benefit from electricity access. Is there any from the treatment group is get more benefit from electricity access compared with the control group. The control group that I mentioned before is Damu and Lunga place. So we try to get the indicator. In this case, our dependent variable is the share of kerosene spending. Why? Because our observation indicates that when people get electricity, the first spending that they reduce is kerosene. So kerosene should be the first cycle of the impact to the community. So we use kerosene as the indicator as a dependent variable. So kerosene spending to food spending and also to non-food spending. And then based on our observation, we also try to get more intuition. After people reduce spending on kerosene, where the money goes? You have saving because you reduce your consumption on kerosene. Where the money saving goes? This is go to food or non-food spending. So that's why we try to look on the proportion of food and non-food spending after people get electricity. In which area does the saving goes for food or non-food? Next, please. So this table just to answer that after people get electricity, the share of kerosene spending is declining. For example, in Tantong village is the village that get electricity in 2014. The share of kerosene spending declined from 28% to 13%. This is quite substantial. So that's why we also suggest to the new administrative government. I think for the eastern part of Indonesia, the energy conversion is not from kerosene to LPG, but from kerosene to electricity. Because after they get electricity, kerosene consumption declining. So if we talk about the LPG conversion, this is only for Java. How about the other region? So again, our study highlighted that we should go. What is the new administrative government should look on what is the eastern part of Indonesia more seriously. And then it is quite interesting to look on Damu. Damu village get electricity in 2011 and still continuing until now. But as I mentioned before, not all the households get electricity because the connection fee is very expensive. But if you look on the situation in 2013, the share of kerosene spending around 24%, but now about 14%. So there is a dynamic benefit also. So people not instantly reduce kerosene consumption, but it's gradually. So even for the region that has electricity before, the kerosene consumption is gradually also tend to decline. Okay, now I would like to share the net impact rural electrification program on the people welfare that I mentioned in terms of kerosene spending as a share of food spending and non-food spending. So if from the treatment group, this quite declined substantially. So we can argue that for the treatment group, after the people get electricity, the ratio on kerosene spending to food and non-food spending decline more faster than other villages. They don't have access on electricity. So with this, I would like to claim that electricity access help people to reduce spending on energy, especially on kerosene. And then, as I mentioned before, where the savings go from kerosene consumption, because the share of food spending to non-food spending declining, so actually people use the money for non-food spending. So where the non-food spending we still investigate, but maybe our preliminary results so is go for connection fee, to pay connection fee. So for non-food spending, especially for connection fee increasing. How about the spending on education and on health? We still analyzing the data. How much go for health and how much go for education? We still observing the data. But it seems mostly for non-food spending go for connection fee. So it is better for government to help the community how to reduce the connection fee, because the connection fee is determined by the market. So the supplier determine the price actually. So you can pay or not. If not, I cannot get connected electricity to your home. So this is better if government can do some effort to help the community get access electricity to them. Okay, next please. And then for externalities, as I mentioned before, this is not only about the economics, but this is also about the environmental benefit. For example, from the observation, we indicate that the consumption on kerosene declining, and then we convert this to CO2 emission. How much CO2 emission can be reduced? We indicate in our presentation. You can on the front. So actually, if we try to take into account the reduction in subsidy, and for example, if there's a carbon price there, so at least in one village in Tantong, it's about 18.5 million rupiah per year to benefit from rural electrification ratio. This is the externality. But of course, the most important is government can reduce subsidy on kerosene. And declining kerosene consumption also pretty clear, because the agent, there are many local agents that sell kerosene, they're declining in business. So because the demand of kerosene declining after people get electricity. So now, what is the major consumer? Kerosene or fuel is PLN, because PLN still buy fuel from the agent. So, but from the people, they decline, the consumption of kerosene decline. So this is good. So, what is the development agenda for the new government? I think we propose 6 agendas that need to be supported by the new government. First, Joko Widodo plan to reach electrification ratio about 11%, 100% in 1990. Currently it's about 80%, so rest 20%. But I'd like to emphasize here that this is not about 100%, but about the quality. What the meaning of 100% if you only get 12 watts of electricity? This is not the case. So we have to be critical to the government. This is not about 100%, but how about the quality itself? The second is about energy conversion program. So we suggest later if government increase the subsidy, increase the fuel price, part of the saving should go for supporting the rural electricity program. That is important to reduce kerosene consumption and also to improve the people welfare. The third we propose to the government is how to ease the installation cost, because this is too expensive for the rural people. 2 million rupiah. Can you imagine 2 million rupiah for the people that we look on the average income spending is below the poverty line. So this is quite impossible for the poor to pay for the installation cost. So that's why it is better if government can expand the program listrik murah dan hemat for the poor. And then we also suggest for the village fund. So we suggest the part of the village fund, dana desa, also need to be allocated to support the rural infrastructure, especially in constructing transmissions and renewable energy. So should be kind of clear standard. How much go for electricity, how much go for road, how much go for water, and so on. Have to be clear. Yes. And also for special allocation fund. So it seems that special allocation fund dan alokasi khusus, we have dan alokasi khusus for electricity. But it seems that this only project fund is not really the fund that is sustainable for sustaining the electricity access to the community. Why? Because after government disbursed the fund, they constructed solar panel, and then 1 year, 2 years, the solar panel cannot work. So it is wasting of money. Why? Because the government, the local government, they don't have any capacity to run the project. There are no engineering, no electrical there. So it's really an inefficient project. So in our proposal, why not reallocate the special allocation fund, give it to the highest authority here, the state-owned company. Let's allocate the special allocation fund for electricity to support PLN, because PLN also lack of money, especially for rural electrification program. And then we also suggest again to allocate fuel and electric subsidy for infrastructure items. And then this is the most important. The most important part now is there is no agency that specifically handle rural electrification program. So all the departments, the institutions do the same thing, they replicate the same problem. So it is better now to set up the new institution, especially in PLN or in Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. There's an agency on rural electrification program. Why? Because ASEAN import 66 million Indonesian people don't have electricity access. We contribute 45% of energy poor in the regions. This is really, really substantial problem. But in our country, there is no specific agency that have responsible for this problem. So this is quite paradox. We have big problems, but no great institution can handle this one. So I think that's all our presentation, and thank you so much for your time.